What's up, Wise Take? Welcome to another edition of the Wise Take DFS interview. I am your host, Patio Joe. You can follow me on Twitter at Patio Joe Ref. And today I am stepping in for CK and being a host because our guest today is probably one of, if not my favorite person in the industry, but one of my mentors, Mr. Jeff Mans. You can follow him on Twitter at Jeff_Mans. Before I throw it to you, Jeff, let me just tell you a little right now, guys. Everybody, if you don't know what Jeff is, he's the CEO of Fantasy Guru Elite. He is the host of Elite Sports on Sirius Fantasy Sports every day, Monday through Friday between 3 and 5 Eastern Time. He's also the host of One Man's Opinion podcast. He has about 15 or 16 episodes right now going over a whole bunch of things, not just sports, but life, everything, his history, what he's gone through and such. And he's just probably one of the most hardest working man in the business. Jeff, it has been a pleasure. How are you doing today?
Man, I'm doing great. Appreciate you guys having me on. Patio Joe, this is awesome. You're turning the tables on me, man. I dig this a lot. Well done, man.
I appreciate it. You know, it's funny. I remember the first time, I'll tell everybody, the first time I called up the radio station, probably about 6-7 years ago. Back in those days, you could not get in. You could call. You weren't getting in. And this was when you were working the Friday night late shows or the late night shows. Yeah. And I'm calling in. Finally, I get in, and I'm waiting. And I'm driving home on a Friday night from my football games that I'm refereeing. So I'm waiting on hold, and the show runs out, and you couldn't get to my call. But this is how good Jeff was, guys. He literally waited. He said, everybody wait on hold. And he answered my question, even though he could have went home. It was probably 2-3 o'clock in the morning at that point. And that always stuck with me. And then who knows, Jeff gets the couple of years later, Jeff gets the afternoon show with the wild man, Tommy G. And now all of a sudden he's got the #1 rated show on Sirius Fantasy Sports. And I've called now many times, and I record most of the times I call up so I can kind of, listen to it over to see maybe if I'm getting better at calling you and such. Because the funny part is I wanted you to remember me, and I remember the only way I was going to remember is I needed to have a catchy name, because you don't remember Joe in LA, but you're going to remember Patio Joe.
Yeah,
and thus that's what happened.
Always make yourself memorable. That's always a good idea. I mean, that's funny you say that. And those midnight shows were my favorites because we were a little looser, a little less commercial time. We had a couple extra minutes. We got to things. And yeah, I used to stay after all the time, and whoever was on the phone lines, the bank of phone calls, we would make sure we got to everybody, even if it, like you said, sometimes it would take 2 hours after the show. We'd do like a whole nother show that was never broadcast, but the station wasn't live after 2 a.m. So it's like, well, these people are waiting at that time of night to get their question answered. We're going to stay there and do that. So that's cool that that's the first time you called the show. I remember you've called a lot with some on several great topics over the years. So you're definitely one of my favorites, man.
Mm-hmm. Now, you grew up in what town in Illinois did you grow up in?
Southside Chicago, Burbank, Bridgeport, those two areas kind of, going back ping pong and back and forth. I eventually by like junior high moved out to the burbs. And then as an adult, I moved further and further away because, less and less affordable near the city. But yeah, I grew up in Burbank/Bridgeport.
That's ironic because I grew up in Burbank, California, born in Burbank.
I'm willing to say these two are different. We are different surroundings. Let's just say that.
So here's another thing. You're gonna be 43 in July, right?
Yes, sir.
I turned 43 in June. So
oh wow.
I feel like it's funny, but then I listened to your podcast, and I gotta say you have lived a life that makes me feel fortunate for the life that I've been given because of what you rose up and how you've made it yourself, and you're an inspiration. Everybody's got to go back and read some of those, listen to some of those podcasts. The one with your father, the one that you just did, going back what you've dealt with in your childhood. Everybody needs to go back and just that just to see what you've become is an inspiration to everybody. Let me ask you this. This is the one question that I've been wanting to ask you probably since I've been following you. How many hours a night do you get of sleep?
Oh yeah, this is I get about 4 hours a night. That it's roughly like it's weird. I've never been a sleeper. You know, people are all wired differently. Some of us are, people in the NFL, NBA, these are great athletes. They were born to be athletes. Other people have great memories or they're great at math. I believe in inherent skills of certain people. I didn't have any skills. My only skill was that I could function on virtually no sleep. I don't know why it's been that way pretty much my whole life. I just always stayed up real late at night. I've always been a night owl. I like when the rest of the world is sleeping. I feel like I catch up and pass people in that regard, when it comes to work and things like that and just preparation for the day, or whether it's cleaning the house or getting something done, a repair around the house, or it's working on fantasy football projections or something. So yeah, I get about 4 hours of sleep a night, sometimes less, sometimes a little more, but that's what I go for these days is 4 hours.
You're one of those people I've always feel like there's a 25th hour for you. It's crazy,
Wish.
For me, I'm the flip side. I wake up early. I try to get all the stuff out early because it's almost the same thing. It's quiet, your mind's kind of clear, all that stuff. I get about 4 to 5 hours of sleep, so I get you. What would you be doing if you weren't in fantasy sports?
If I wasn't in fantasy sports, well, I'll assume just out of the sports industry as a whole, because I went to journalism school, so I wanted to be a sports writer. I changed my major because of an illness I had my sophomore year of college. I was forced to drop out, then go back, and I switched to computer science. So I had started a PC repair company when I got out of college, and then I also worked for the government in their IT department for the Department of Defense, the Postal Service. I bounced around government for a while. So I would like to say IT because I was in that arena for 16 years, believe it or not. But I'll be honest, man, I'm such a dinosaur when it comes to technology these days. It's wild how things have passed me by. That just like I was standing still. So if I wasn't in any sports, and I won't say IT because I kind of did that for a while too, what would I be doing? Well, I mean, I think it's some sort of business. Like I'd probably maybe run a grocery store or something like that. I've always had the business mentality and brain. Like I don't know what it is that attracts me to building a business from scratch, acquiring customers and contacts and things like that and sort of building it up. That's always been something I'm drawn to. My old man was in the grocery store business as well. My oldest brother's a butcher, has been a butcher his whole life. And we've always talked about sort of doing ideas of like chains of markets, like with, fresh sandwiches and things like that. So I would still be doing something on the business side, but most likely in like maybe a grocery store field. I don't know. I've never really thought about that, but I tried to give you something outside of the norm.
My mother was actually working at a grocery store for like 40 years as a bookkeeper.
Nice.
Yeah, she was a bookkeeper at Vaughn's for like 40 years. Yeah, and one of my first jobs was bagging groceries at Vaughn's. Man. Yeah, it was crazy. What in the getting in the fantasy industry? Yeah. Especially talking on the radio and such and writing and stuff, how beneficial is it to go to journalism school or radio broadcasting school?
Ooh, great question, because everyone thinks they can do it, of course. I don't know if I'm one of those. I'm torn between whether I don't believe in higher education as much as other people. I believe in learning it. I believe in knowing it. I don't believe that you need to pay hundreds of thousands of dollars to acquire that knowledge. I think you can learn on the job and things like that. So I think it depends on your upbringing. It depends on your basic skill sets as well. For most of the industry, quite honestly, I think it would be beneficial to go to broadcasting school because there's a lot of little intricacies that folks don't understand. Timing mechanisms, pauses, dealing with the advertisers, preparation off the air, building a show plan, incorporating that into it, doing live shows versus recorded, live with an audience versus live on the air. There's all these different elements that I think it would behoove people to pick up on. You don't need a 4-year degree, I wouldn't think. For me, I went to journalism school, but I also was raised on the radio. There was a good song from the 80s. Fast Times at Richmond High actually had it. Raised on the radio, where my mom drove a school bus, always had, when I was riding the bus with her in the summers even, she was listening to portable radio all the time. Bob Collins, Wally Phillips, these morning guys eventually became like Mike North and these the sports radio stations in Chicago in my sort of preteen to teenage years. I picked up on a lot of the mannerisms, the timing elements, and I just instinctually had that, a good base for all that. So, if you come from that kind of background, if you've always been enamored with radio and things, or broadcasting in general, television, radio, I think you can get away with, just a informal type training, as long as you pick up on some things. But, I definitely think you can't just pick up a mic and go, because, the only way any of us stay in business are people actually tuning in and listening. And if you can't figure out how to tap into your audience, you're in trouble, whether you're talking podcast, radio, video, audio recordings, video, whatever it may be, television. So,
yeah, you've touched on that a lot when you and Tommy were together. You guys would talk about it. You would bring in it. You were kind of his bringing him along when he was on the show together when you first started out, that FanDuel show, and he was first come on to the afternoon. You guys would talk about how kind of like you were trying to teach him the ways, sort of like this, and now, I mean, he could probably host his own show. I feel like he's going to get into politics soon.
Oh, well, soon. What do you mean? You're saying he's not into politics? Yeah, I think he's
before we know it.
He's up to his nostrils in politics. No, the thing with Tommy was fascinating, and it's been, when anybody's worked with me, our station at Sirius XM was sort of, they took a lot of industry people with podcasts and whatnot and kind of gave them the forum, which is a great opportunity. What I've always known is that you need to be prepared because anything can happen on live radio. And I put a lot of prep into every single show. It's not just talk off the cuff. Now, I love talking off the cuff. I love it. But the elements Tommy realized, because he had been doing radio 2 years at that point, but he had never worked with somebody who actually did a show plan, submitted the show plan. Like when your show on Sirius, I'll just say it, when your shows, when they care about you on Sirius, you have to submit a show plan. You have to submit an after show plan, a report of what you're supposed to do on the show. They approve it. Afterwards, what you actually did on the show and approve it. Like those are important. Some of the nighttime shows and some people that were paying to be on the radio, they didn't have to do those things. So that's why it's kind of just willy-nilly. Well, when Tommy started working with me and he'd see those show plans come in at 2, 3, 4 a.m. for the next day, he'd be like, oh, wow, I didn't know I have to learn all this. Oh, boy. I have to figure out all, these numbers or this stats. We're going to talk about these topics. Here's a backup plan. I always like to have like a sitcom writer, right? A, B, and C story arcs. I like to do that. I build my radio shows like that in case I like to tap into what is going on during those hours that I'm live, but I want to be prepared for that. So I'll have 3, 4 different lines of thinking, ways to go in case I feel what I'm starting to talk about or what I wanted to talk about isn't catching on. If that's not catching on, if people aren't calling and, if you can, it's a feel, it's an instinct. If that's not working, we got to go somewhere else. Like we have to go. You only get limited time. Can't just drown out whatever I had planned, because if it's not working, you only got that one shot for the day to capture the audience, and they'll turn somewhere else. So I think those elements and being prepared for that was something that Tommy wasn't used to previously.
And then I would imagine all it takes is one phone call of some sort of polarizing topic, and all of a sudden your show plan is out the door because everybody wants to talk about whatever that was.
Absolutely. A breaking news item or Yeah. Oh, you never know what a day's going to present, and you have to be ready to go on that. And you have to be, you have to either have a background in, so you kind of got to precipitate the breaking news, like what's going on right now. Right now, Major League Baseball owners and players are meeting. Are they about to come back? Like I have to be ready to go, because if that happens between 3 and 5, boom, I'm on it, and I have to have a thought based on how this goes, and people want to tune in to see where, what I think of certain, the direction it goes. Is there an approval? Did the players union say no? Is it over money? Is it over health, testing, whatever it is? So you have to be prepared for all those elements, even though you might not use it in a given show.
Mm-hmm. All right. Yeah. So you brought up here about, the MLB returning, and just like the MLB returning, we might have talk about basketball returning. There's going to be a lot of DFS sports coming around, starting up. And, as a new player, when I started at Wise Take, I kind of took from you like 4 kind of things that I kind of drilled into the people that were going to sign up. One was to have a goal, to know what you want to do in this, to not just don't play just to play. 2, know what type of player you are, if a cash game player or an MME player. 3, contest selection, knowing what the right contest to go into. And then finally, 4 was bankroll management. And that was before even making any selection of any player or whatever. I felt like that was the 4 major things you really need to kind of wrap your mind around in order to get into a sport. Is there any other tips or something, somebody starting out, they're going to want to play? Obviously, it's going to be crazy when it first starts up, that kind of stuff. And then what's your opinion on the MLB returning? Are you happy about it? 82 games? It seemed like yesterday you said you were happy about the shorter season and stuff. It could be quick, could be kind of a lot of fun. What do you think?
Well, first off, I think those 4 bullet points that you just illustrated, I think that's dead on. I think those are mistakes people make. That's the stuff that most folks and most DFS players, they don't want to talk about, they don't want to think about. And I've always been curious on the psychology behind why. Like, why don't you want to plan? It's just strange to me you wouldn't plan on the type of contest you're going to play, the end result of what it's going to be. Oh, I want to win $1 million. I want to win a live final. Yeah, okay, great. I mean, does anybody go on the road and say, I'm going to the grocery store, but I have no idea, and you start driving in circles till you run into one? Like, no, you know the route you're taking, right? You know how to get there. Pave the road. Understand where you have to, understand the map and the landscape there. So those 4 points are really good. And, beyond that, I think you start getting into specifics and you start talking about, whatever sport you're playing, different parts like that. As far as Major League Baseball is concerned, I worry that I love the 82 game idea. I think there's too many baseball games. The world, the population, we just talked about radio, right? And when I'm doing a show and I realize, okay, I really wanted to talk about wide receiver. Oh, Cam Akers, one of my favorite, rookie runner. I really want to talk about this kid. And then I start talking about him and I see it's crickets. I'm looking at Patio Joe and he's just like, whatever, bro. I'm looking at you could just tell, and it's the same kind of thing for baseball, but Major League Baseball isn't looking at their audience. Their audience falls off, has been dwindling every single solitary year in every single solitary metric you could possibly bring forth. And they're not doing anything about it. You need to shorten a season. A shorter season means better brand of baseball. Instead of putting guys on the disabled list or injured list now to rest them, they play and you push them harder. The pitchers go deeper into ball games. Why? Because that's what they should be doing. It's like playoff baseball. Playoff baseball is nothing like the regular season. And I think the less games we have, the more impactful each one of those outcomes are. And thus we're going to get a better brand. So I'm all about an 82 game schedule or any kind of limitation because I think there's too much fluff.
Yeah. It's funny. Out of all the sports, for some odd reason, baseball, the playoffs, it's a palpable difference. I don't know what it is. In football, it's like it's the one mistake a team makes in a playoff game or such. In basketball, you can pick who's going to win right now. But in baseball, man, it's like for some reason pitchers all of a sudden just can't go 5 innings anymore. For some in the playoffs, they just can't do it, and it's crazy, you know.
Yeah, they're. I mean, the managers are managing as if every pitch matters, and that's fun and it's exciting, and it's engaging, and yeah, there's no need to rest your bullpen or rest this guy, rest that guy. It's like blow out their arms. You know, I'm a White Sox fan. I grew up, just a mile from the ballpark, really, in Bridgeport when I was there, and had season tickets. And the 05 season, like, you pretty much blew out Bobby Jenks' arm. You pretty much blew out Contreras' arm, El Duque's arm, John Garland's arm, like all these guys people barely remember, but I'll never forget that championship. Like, it's the greatest thing, to happen to a Southside native like myself. So, like, we need more of that in all sports. Stop resting. It's like dynasty leagues where all anybody does, these guys, that all they do is rebuild. They're building for an outcome that never happens. It's like, dude, let's go. You got to start winning at some point. Win now. And I wish the major league teams would do more of that, trying to win now during their fans' lifetime than some rainy day 20 years from now.
Man, you named off a good host of Chicago White Sox pitchers. I actually played against one myself. I played against Jim Parquet.
Really? Jimmy Parquet? Yeah, man.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he graduated in about a year before I did. We grew up in the same town and everything, so played against him a lot. So he was good.
I love Jimmy Parquet. He started a notorious brawl. I think it was with the Tigers. He beamed one of their Tigers players, and it led to like one of the biggest baseball brawls I've ever seen. It was at Comiskey Park at that time, and I think there's like 13 to 15 suspensions after it and everything. It was a wild time, and Parquet's the guy who started it.
So a couple weeks ago, we had on this interview, we had one of the best MME players in the world, Mr. Osimo. He has a show on Fantasy Sports, or hosts one, or sponsors it, or whatever. And basically, I wanted you on here because I feel like you are one of the best cash game players, but also single entry players. And you talk about, do you only do a few lineups or one in almost all sports? How was that just the years of just playing and just getting it to that point where you're comfortable with one lineup? How have you perfected it, basically, that you're good with throwing one or two lineups out there on a Sunday or a?
Yeah, it's definitely, it's like a recipe. It's part confidence, part experience, part knowing the type of player that I am that you alluded to before. All of that plays a role into what I'm able to do now. It wasn't always that way. I tell the story all the time. I became a profitable or winning DFS player after being a losing, terrible losing DFS player, right? I had to re-image and refigure out my entire, my scene. I had to be honest with myself at a time when I had a real bad conversation with the wife. I used to play Snapdraft from Roto World. I used to play Fantazzle.com back in the day. I was a winning high stakes player in 06 through 2010. And I thought in like 2009 that I was, oh my God, I could play this daily. I'm just going to win all this money. So I deposit. And I wasn't winning. I deposit. And actually, my wife comes to me with a credit card bill, like, hey, man, what are you doing? Like, what the hell? Well, no, I got this. I'm going to do it. And it's the machismo that we think, well, I'm just better than this guy. Mm-hmm. I'm better than these. But I wasn't, because I wasn't playing daily fantasy sports. I was playing seasonal fantasy sports. I was playing sports analysis, and it wasn't going to work. So I had to rebuild my brand. I realized I'm not going to have the bankroll that some of these other guys were going to have, and that I could throw away lineups and just hope to have one. I wasn't going to be able to do that, nor did I really have the time for all that. So part of that was I knew that was going to be my road, and I knew I needed to build my bankroll, and thus I went into the best odds on the board. The best odds, single entry, cash games. 50% of the field wins. Okay. I mean, I always say in a seasonal league, if the top, let's say a 12-team league, top 6 guys all double their money, you would be like, yeah, hell yeah, it's great. That's, it's not that hard to do for somebody that pays attention. It's a lot easier than saying I'm going to hit the Millie Maker, or I'm going to hit a live final or qualify for a live final or whatever it may be. So I built my bankroll that way. There was a moment I said, all right, this has got to be my last deposit ever. And I think it was right when FanDuel was out, DraftKings was coming out. And it was FanDuel that I was playing. And I said, this is it. And I just went $1 to $2, $2 to $4, $4 to $8. And I'd win and lose. And there was plenty of times I was on my last dollar, but I doubled it. I only allowed myself to play higher contests or more contests when I won, because I wanted to do it. It's like having a piece of chocolate cake or something. He's like, no, you're too fat. Don't eat the chocolate cake. Do your cardio. You could have a piece of cake or whatever it is. And that's how I built my bankroll. I was real about myself, and it took time. I didn't have a viable bankroll until 2014. It took like 4 years of really building into something that, okay, now I could play higher money contests, and thus I could win more money more regularly. Instead of winning $2 here or $10 a night or $20 a night, I could win $100, $200, $500 a night. So it was a very gradual process and all that. And over the years, I've learned that when I look at my bankroll, my budget for the year, I throw a lot of money away doing the small things. Oh, I'm going to throw a lineup into the Millie Maker. I'm going to throw one into the qualifier. I'm not doing my best. I'm not giving it my best. Why bother with a lineup? Why bother giving money up for something that's not your best? I know what should win. I know what will have the best odds to win in a given night in DFS baseball or a given week in football. I know that. So if it doesn't work out, then it doesn't work out. But I limit my losses. And that's something a lot of players that claim to do what I do, they don't, because they can't get over the temptation to throw lineups in, to play other contests, to be seen by people and all that. Once I won like my second live final, I was out. I'm like, I don't need to prove anymore. I don't need to be seen. I don't need to go on Twitter and boast about myself. I have a chance to help real people build up. I have a chance to win real money for myself and my family. And that's all I'm going to be concentrating on. And thus, you'd be stunned at my my ROI every year or every season, baseball and football. Don't look at my NBA stuff. That's I have a problem when I play NBA. But I don't enter a lot of contests. And when I go on my winning streaks, week of football, a couple of days in a row in baseball, like that money's great. I'm not throwing anything out on the back end. And that's why I stay above water and stay in the profitability.
Yeah, I that's totally agree. Guys, if you're listening to this, that's like, preach that. That is like gospel. That's what you need to do. What year did you go to the Playboy Mansion? What was the most surprising thing when you got there that was like, wow, didn't think that was going to go on? And then what was the most like, I guess, overhyped kind of thing about the Playboy?
How PG do I have to keep it?
You could go. I mean, you could go.
I saw Jeremy Levine laying pipe, all over the place. Like, I walked into the bathroom and he's just going to town on some Playmate there. And I'm like, okay, like, dude, I gotta take a piss. And he's like, yeah, dude, right over there, no problem. And he's just going to town. I'm like, all right, well, it's officially the Playboy Mansion. I thought that was a great time. What year was the first? I lost the first time I went to the mansion. I qualified. I think that was 2014 probably. And then 2015 is the year I won the baseball championship there. That was the $100,000 win. So that was phenomenal, obviously. And then I went back the following year. This never gets notarized, but So I had a run of 2050. I won in June of that. I qualified for the other live finals. I took third in the FanDuel live final that year. Then the following 2016 for the football live final, I won $250,000 on Fantasy Feud in their live final. And then I came back and defend my championship at the Playboy Mansion the following year and took third place in the baseball championship. So it was a pretty great run of qualifying and live finals. Although I'll tell you guys, as great as those stories are, it cost a lot of money. And I think I was profitable because I think I won $50K in that third place for at the second Playboy Mansion one. But it took me like $25,000 to $30,000 to get there, to qualify and all that. That chasing is what you want to keep yourself out of. Don't throw money back into it to try to stay on top or whatever. That's the problem. I won't name names, but people I've worked with in the past that have done that, and it's sad because I see it, because you get addicted to the feeling of limelight. You get addicted to people saying you're great, and then you chase it. And the way that you chase it in live finals and qualifiers, boy, that is the most expensive notoriety or retweet or like on Twitter you will ever have. Because I went down there, and it was at that point, right after that live final, I said, no, man. Me and Ted looked at each other and we said, no, we're not chasing this crap anymore. We've proven ourselves. We've done it. I am not throwing $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 into qualifying for a live final hoping I win another one. No freaking way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can imagine Ted probably has perma-smile on his perma-grin at the Playboy Mansion the entire time. Hey,
he is low-key creepy, dude. He is so low-key, like watching Ted just looking at everybody.
With a cigarette, right?
Yeah, oh yeah, smoke breaks, giving all the bunnies smokes out there. There is one he was chasing forever. Not chasing because he's a married guy, but he was just following her around the whole time. Ted is low-key creeper status, man. And nobody calls him out on it, but I'll do it.
So one last thing about baseball, and then we'll move to football. Twitter has become a place where when I first started out in the business, and when I first started out, wanted to do DFS, wanted to do B in fantasy, they're like, get a Twitter account. That's the way you got to do it. Get a Twitter account, because this is where you're going to see all the touts are there and this and that. Now, I think Twitter is terrible for touts because you can never tell when they're being serious, at least most of them. That's one of them. And two, they think that they know everything, and it's just so frustrating. But this brings me to my next baseball question, because I got into not even Twitter beef, just like in an argument. And this guy was saying a couple weeks ago how Joey Votto was a better hitter than Tony Gwynn. And he threw out all these things, these other stats and this and that. And I'm like, wait a minute. Tony Gwynn's one of the top, at least in my lifetime, top 2 or 3 hitters I've ever seen in my life. I mean, I have his bat signed, Tony Gwynn bat signed right here, Jeff.
Yeah,
that I got from my dad's personal friend, Eric Gregg, who umpired, I'm sure you know.
Yeah.
My dad went to minor league umpiring school with him. So I got a Tony Gwynn bat. Anyways, when I heard that, I just can't see how it just doesn't seem like on first thing how you could even compare the two. What say you?
Well, I mean, they're different style of hitters too. I mean, Tony Gwynn, different ballparks, different eras. It's really hard to do that. For my money, my just belief system, Tony Gwynn's a better hitter. Mm-hmm. That doesn't make him necessarily more valuable, because Joey Votto showed a lot more power throughout his career, and his hits could have meant more. But that's why these are team games, and the role each player plays within that team is very important. Gwynn was always hitting first or second for the Padres all those years. Mm-hmm. His job was to get on base, get hits. Slapping a ball in the left field was his role. Joey Votto's hitting the middle of the lineup for the most part until recently for the Reds. He was driving in those guys. So, different lineage a little bit. But, I mean, to say anybody, I don't know if anybody can clearly say any hitter is better than Tony Gwynn. What Tony Gwynn was able to do, he didn't miss the baseball, folks. I don't know what anybody needs to understand. He's a guy who didn't miss the baseball. And not only did he found holes, he drove the ball when he needed to, he got on base when he needed to. I don't know how anybody could confidently say they were better than Tony Gwynn. I think Joey Votto's a very, very good hitter. I think he's great plate discipline, only swinging the pitches that are in his wheelhouse. He drove the ball with more power over his career than Tony Gwynn probably did. But, man, I mean, if I had to choose, it would be Tony Gwynn.
Yeah.
It's not that close.
I think it was more just the randomness that you would just throw out those two comparison out of nowhere. It was just kind of struck me as kind of weird. But anyways, let's move on to the NFL. We know, I mean, you're a baseball guy, but you love NFL too. So, I feel like we're going to start on time, but I don't think there might not even be the games in California at first. They might be playing somewhere else. What do you think? Are we starting on time? Obviously, I don't see any fans, but there might be fans. I know some people are talking about fans. What's your opinion on that?
Oof. LA threw us a curveball yesterday. Yeah, I'm in Arizona where they're like, everything's open now. They're like, just go. We don't care. Restaurants, bar, everything's open. And, 300 miles west, they're like, no, nobody's ever coming out of their houses again. So it's like that all over the country. Some states are opening back up. I think the NFL will start on time. And the reason I think that is you look at the power they have, the amount of money they bring in, and NFL affects everything from product sales to television ratings to pop culture, everything. And the amount of jobs that are gleaned off of the National Football League are tremendous as well. It's more than any other sport combined. You could combine the three next major sports and you still don't equal the NFL. That's how powerful they've become. And then you look at it, they had a chance to postpone free agency. They didn't. They had a chance to postpone, combine, then free agency. They didn't. The NFL draft, they didn't. So, they keep going on these things. And the schedule, they didn't. They're going to do it. They're going to find a way. They'll find the states they have to be in to have these games. If there's nobody in the stands, so be it. It's a television game anyway. That's why they make $1 billion a year plus on television alone. I don't think there's anything that's going to slow down the National Football League, short of obviously an outbreak or something really bad or tragic when it comes to the spread of the coronavirus.
Yeah, I mean, me, I also look at it from a referee point of view, more of like, wow, the referees will probably have to get tested 2 or 3 days before every game. It might even trickle down to the college. In fact, do we bubble these college officials who live with their families Monday through Thursday, where they fly to the city on, and then I'm a high school referee too, and I don't think there might be high school football this year. But there might be, we're just not sure in California. But that's another issue. Now, I want to get to a couple of receivers I want to talk to you about. First off, do you think Drew Lock has the most pressure on him this year?
No, not the most pressure. I think the expectations have been raised considerably because of what the Broncos have done this offseason. But I think what they did this offseason is going to help him. He showed flashes at the end of last year. He's got the arm strength. He's got the swagger. He's a smart quarterback. He's not quite as analytical as Peyton Manning or even Tom Brady later in his career, at least at this stage yet. But he's very capable in the classroom as well. You go and get him a running back. First, you improve the offensive line. Then you get him a running back like Melvin Gordon. Then you get him better receiving options, and they lucked out with Jerry Jeudy being there, and KJ Hamler too. He's got a lot of weapons, so I think there are higher expectations because of what the Broncos did. But I don't think he's got he doesn't have the same pressure as Carson Wentz, who I think with that Jalen Hurts is a lot. Aaron Rodgers because of the Jordan Love selection. Derek Carr because he's got Marcus Mariota breathing down his neck right now. Phillip Rivers because Father Time is catching up to him and he needs to sign that 1-year deal in Indianapolis. He's going to have to do something. Tom Brady, who's trying to prove a legacy thing where his legacy depends on what he can do with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. If Tom Brady goes 5-11 and the Patriots are the 1 or 2 seed in the AFC, the world will look different. And it may be fair, may not be fair because he's 42 years of age. But so as far as quarterbacks with a lot to lose or whatever, I don't think Drew Lock's quite in that scope yet. Not yet.
Yeah, because it's not like if he doesn't win the division, nobody expects him to because of the Chiefs are in the same division. So
yeah, exactly. 100% right. I think Derek Carr is under a lot more pressure than Drew Lock this year at least.
Okay, so it seems to me like the fantasy industry's wide receiver darling this year is A.J. Brown. They think he's going to be the next Antonio Brown. He is just the greatest. I hear all on Twitter, everybody's saying about how A.J. Brown is so good. And I'm thinking to myself, did everybody forget the guy that went to the same college as him and in the playoffs absolutely just became of age in the playoffs? And that's DK Metcalf. And like you, in your rankings, you have DK Metcalf ahead of AJ Brown. So you kind of see the way same I do. But everybody else, they have AJ Brown. Fantasy pros have him 11 receivers ahead of DK Metcalf. I just don't see it. What are everybody else seeing that's so much better than DK? I just don't see it. You don't either. So
Joe,
help out.
Bro, it's reactionary. I mean, this is the problem with the industry as a whole. And I don't say that to be mean. I don't want to sound like I'm better and any of that kind of stuff or put down people in our space. But, I think that in 2020 and moving forward, we have a job. If you want to make fantasy sports and sports analysis your job, you have to offer more than just reciting last year's numbers and reacting to whatever happened last year. And I do that every year, obviously, reset everything. And what did the Tennessee Titans show you this year? Why is A.J. Brown a better buy this year for the Titans offense than he was last year? I had A.J. Brown as my number one receiver going into last year's draft class, and people thought I was crazy. He's a sure-handed kid who loves running after the catch. We saw flashes of that in Tennessee, and I think he did very well. But this is a run-first, run-second offense. We saw they lose Jack Conklin. They go and get a replacement right tackle right out the bat. Derrick Henry's there. They get another running back in Darrington Evans in the draft. You're not going to get enough targets. So he's got to hit that same efficiency that he did last year, even to get to where he did. And when you look at the totality of A.J. Brown's year last year, what stands out? I mean, 84 targets, 52 receptions. Okay, it's solid. 1,051 yards, very good. 8 touchdowns, very solid. But even if he did that, people are expecting him to build on that. I don't know. There's not that much room to go, averaging over 20 yards per reception. So whereas DK Metcalf, dude's a man-child, bigger, stronger, faster, and he's playing with one of the best quarterbacks in the National Football League, and Russell Wilson is proved to be, like you said, playoff time and down the stretch to be his go-to guy, usurping Tyler Lockett. So I like DK Metcalf. I think as well as DK Metcalf, his numbers compare very, very similarly to A.J. Brown last year. He's got a lot more room to grow where A.J. he pretty much topped out, I think, on what he could do in this offense.
It felt to me, because I didn't have him on any of my teams last year, but it just felt to me like A.J. Brown was like the ultimate GPP player. He would have a huge week and then go away. So those numbers got to be where they were, but he had them in maybe 5 weeks. Yeah. Huge weeks, and everything else was just nothing.
Well, because it's game flow. I mean, you had to. The Tennessee, if things go right, this is what I always try to tell people. This is why systems matter, game scripts matter, game flow matter. This stuff is paramount because you could be fast, tall, big, skilled, all this stuff. You could be the perfect football player at any position. If you don't get the opportunity, none of it means anything. And in this offense, with Arthur Smith calling the
Uh-oh.
Play.
I'm good.
Yeah, they're going to hope that the defense could, stop the opposing offense, run the ball, get a lead, sit on the football, and that you got to look at what the goal of the offenses are across the National Football League. And the goal of the Tennessee Titans is not to air it out. It's not to have Ryan Tannehill throw 40 plus times. Thus, you're not going to get 8 to 10 plus targets on A.J. Brown. Thus, you're not going to get 6 plus catches every week, 100 plus yards every week, and a good chance for a touchdown. It's not going to happen. You're going to have big ups and big downs. That's how it's going to be in this system.
Yeah. What round are you taking A.J. Green this year? Are you after maybe your wide receiver 2, after you've had 2 running backs and a tight end? Where's he sliding this year?
I am I'm very bullish on A.J. Green, but I've had to calm down on it just because got to see him work out, got to see some camp before I'm buying at the pre-injury levels. T. Higgins is obviously his replacement there. They have so many wideouts. They have a rookie quarterback, so if I can get A.J. Green probably around the 5th round is where I start now. Like I did a mock 2 months ago, and I think I took him in the 3rd round. That was a mistake in retrospect. But I think he'll end up settling. 5th round is where I may break the seal, depending on who else is on the board.
Mm-hmm. All right. So I listened to your the podcast you had with Armando Marsal last week about your draft grades and stuff. And there's three main guys here at the Wise Take Nation. One's a Charger fan, one's a Giants fan, and one is a Jets fan. I'm the Charger fan. DK is the Jets fan, and my man Paulie is the Giants fan. Talk to us about the Jets, the Giants, and the Chargers.
All right. Jets love Mekhi Becton a lot. I think it bothers me. So I'm constantly in arguments with Jets fans because every year they think they're going to win the Super Bowl, and every year it's just never going to play out, right? And I hate to say it, I'd love to see the Jets back in prominence. I think the fan base deserves it. I really do. But the drafts and Adam Gase just aren't there. I like what the Jets were able to do in this draft, and it all started with getting Becton. This is a world-changing offensive tackle. You don't teach 6'7", 6'8", 370 that can move. It's impossible. It doesn't happen. He is one of those guys that could be a Hall of Famer and just plow through multiple defensive linemen week in and week out for you. He's going to protect Sam Bradford, clear room for Le'Veon Bell, and just make this whole offense better. I thought Denzel Mims is a fantastic get. 2nd round, I had a 1st round grade on him. Perfect downfield threat for Robbie Anderson. They don't run the route tree at Baylor. Guess what, everybody? Robbie Anderson didn't run the route tree in New York. He hasn't for years, so there's no reason he can't fit in there. Ashton Davis was phenomenal. Great safety out of Cal that they got in the 3rd round. Gives you some protection there in case their safety gets blown up and they start playing games with the contract that's upcoming there. So I liked what the Jets did a great deal. The Chargers, however, Justin Herbert, it all comes back to them because if Justin Herbert turns out to be a star, they won the draft or they had a great draft. If he doesn't, they had a crappy draft. I like Kenneth Murray, the linebacker out of Oklahoma, was their 2nd pick of the 1st round, I do believe. So I like that one. Josh Kelly's a nice compliment to Austin Eckler, a between the tackles runner that I think actually has fantasy appeal. But it all comes down to Herbert. And quite honestly, I remember when they were recruiting, every college in America wanted Justin Herbert coming out of high school. And he was supposed to be the next big thing. He was supposed to be Trevor Lawrence before Trevor Lawrence was Trevor Lawrence. And it just hasn't worked out. And all I watched at Oregon was screen pass, screen pass, screen pass, screen pass, screen pass, screen pass. 24% screen pass of that offense. I don't know what to make of the kid. I really don't. Impressed at times at the Senior Bowl, but the whole draft for the Chargers resides on that one. And who was the 3rd team you said?
The Giants.
I like the Giants. I liked what the Giants did too. Gettleman keeps getting blasted. I think everybody in the DFS/fantasy industry should keep blasting Dave Gettleman so that all he does is keep having great drafts after great drafts. Because Andrew Thomas and Xavier McKinney, even Matt Pert, I had when I was on doing the coverage of the draft, Matt Pert out of UConn, I think he's got great footwork. I think he's better than Tristan Wirfs, who was taken in the first round, quite honestly, at least at pass protection. Not athletically as gifted as Wirfs was, but those are the first 3 picks. Those are pretty damn good. Interior lineman Shane Lemieux, that's another guy. You put him on the opposite guard side of Will Hernandez, and now you've got major run blockers for Saquon Barkley. You got the outside tackle, the right tackle, Andrew Thomas. Good safety that finally replaces Landon Collins that they never replaced last year. They have to build up that secondary, but I think the Giants did a great job protecting Daniel Jones, giving Saquon Barkley more runway to be the best player or one of the best players in the National Football League. So I think they had a very, very impressive draft.
All right, yeah. You know, the Chargers, I wonder, would Murray have been there at the 37th pick in the second pick, their second round pick? Did they really have to move up into the first round to get Murray? Would he have still been there at the 7th pick in the second round? I probably think he would have been, but, I don't know. I didn't know that, I don't know all the guys as much as you do. So, and you're right with Herbert. I saw him in the Coliseum this year play against SC, and he was good. They came back and won, but he didn't wow me and stuff.
Yeah.
Okay. So I got 2 more things. I'm going to throw out some NFL over win totals and just go over, under, whatever you think. And then we got one more thing we're going to wrap up. Okay.
Great.
So Patriots 9.5.
Oh boy. I'm still not impressed with the division as a whole. Bill Belichick is a maestro. I mean, that's a team that I would likely stay away from, but just over under 9.5. I'm going to go under. I think that obviously we just don't know what Jarrett Stidham is, and it's going to be a very conservative, vanilla offense. They're going to try to win it with defense. Defense is very good, but I don't know if they're going to be able to score enough points. So I'll take the under there, although a little less confident. 9.5.
Panthers 5.5.
Oh boy. Under. 5.5 is a low number, and I'm still likely going under. The defense is horrific. Luke Kuechly's gone. James Bradbury's gone. It was already bad last year. Throwing the ball to your running backs does not equal success in the NFL. It's great for fantasy players, but doesn't mean anything. And that's all they did last year. Now it's a new offense, a new head coach, but the scheme likely runs through Christian McCaffrey once again. And I'm not a Teddy Bridgewater guy. He check down. With a bad defense, it's going to bleed points in a very tough division and an offense that I don't think has any chance of keeping up high octane. I'm going to take the under on that.
Bills 9.
Ooh. I mean, this is right there with the Patriots, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
I'm not the biggest Josh Allen guy. I think that to be an effective quarterback, even in modern times, you have to be able to be an accurate passer. You have to give your receivers a chance. Getting a guy like Stephon Diggs helps, and having John Brown, 2 playmakers, but only if you can get them the ball and get them the ball in stride. Defense is great. The division with the Dolphins now, or with Dolphins we know, with the Patriots being 2 more winnable games on their schedule, I'll go over on the Bills, even just as slightly as much as I went under on the Patriots.
Yeah, this is the Bills' year to win the division. This is now they actually have expectations. I think.
Hope so. I mean, they got to, but Josh Allen's gonna have to do with the arm, not just the legs all the time.
And the Colts 9.
Over.
Yeah, I think
whatever number you could put 13, I probably would have went over. Has anybody looked at this defense? Look at the defense of the Colt people. They are the lowest key team in the National Football League right now. They have Justin Houston, Darius Leonard, DeForest Buckner. They just got DeForest Buckner. Just here you go in the middle. Oh my God, you got to be Xavier Rhodes, Rock Ya-Sin, Malik Hooker, TJ Carey in the secondary. Holy cow, boys. A great offensive line. They go get Jonathan Taylor, Michael Pittman in the draft. Veteran QB presence. Not great. Rivers is at the tail end. Folks, Colts are I think it's the best bet to win the AFC because you get the best odds of any of the contenders. The Colts will be better than the Chiefs in 2020. Mark it down.
That's good. I mean, I think, with Rivers, I'll tell you this. 2 years ago, the Chargers won like 9 games on the road, and they did great. Nobody had a problem with Rivers. Why? Because they protected him. If you protect Rivers, he will do the job. I guarantee that. All the years that he's had bad the last few years, go back and look at how the offensive line was of the Chargers. It was terrible. All right, Jeff, last thing to do. You're from Chicago. Obviously, the coronavirus has been, we haven't been able to watch much these days. But The Last Dance, the documentary on the Bulls, has just been amazing for me. To me, I'm not much of a basketball guy anymore, but back in the day, I feel like the reason why I loved basketball back in the 80s and the early 90s is because there was rivalries. There's no more rivalries anymore. There's nothing really I can really get into. Those rivalries back with the Bulls and the Pistons, the Celtics and the Lakers, that was the great time. That was like the golden age of basketball for me. But watching The Last Dance, being from Chicago, this just must be just awesome sitting back and going back time warp. Is there a story, maybe a personal story, something that stands out, maybe you had during that time? Did you go to a playoff game, something like that you could tell us, and how this, documentary has meant to you and stuff?
Well, I went to 4 of the 6 celebrations in Grant Park after they won the NBA Finals. So I did do that. I went to Dennis Rodman in '98. I don't think they've showed it. He had a triple-double game where he had a 3-pointer, had 21 rebounds in the game. My future wife, who's current wife now, but we were dating at the time, as one of our dates was at that game, as a matter of fact, in '98. So the story there. Growing up, I was spoiled because of how good Michael Jordan was and how good those Bulls teams were. It's like you always knew they were going to take care of you. It's like being a kid and you knew your parents, like if you screwed up, your parents most likely would try, always bail you out some one way, shape, or form. That's how Michael Jordan was for me in sports. He would always just come to the rescue. Even when he left, he's like, oh no, what's going to happen? Oh, he's back. Okay, cool. So yeah, man, those were special times. Those were the best of times. I think that if it's possible, I've come away from watching The Last Dance with more respect for Michael Jordan than I had before, which is unbelievable. I just think I never realized what he had to endure, what it's like to get to that level of fame where you can't go out. You can't go get a soda in your hotel lobby because every human being is waiting for you. Like, it's not a life that you'd wish on a lot of people. But he had that killer instinct, and his teammates didn't like him. Opponents didn't like him. It caused a lot of chaos within his life. He lost his father, didn't really get to mourn because everybody accused him of gambling, and that's why he was driven away. I have more respect for Michael Jordan, 22 years later now than I did even in those times.
Yeah, it's been great. I mean, some of the stories I didn't know, not living in LA. You don't get the stories, the whole Pippen. I didn't remember the Pippen sitting down like that and quitting, basically, all the other stuff. It's just been great. Jeff, this has just been awesome having you here talking for an hour, and it's just been, great. Thank you really much. You have anything else to add?
Oh man, that was great. Let me tell you one. I'll tell you one story. I'll give you one more real quick. Of growing up in Bridgeport, where I was, my favorite story is when Kirby Puckett, my childhood hero, came to town. He used to come to town when he played for the Twins, but when he grew up in Bridgeport, so he's a local hero. And I remember, I don't know, I was probably 6, 7 years old. Fur coat, right? Fur coat on him, whatever, and it was April or May when he came in. He would pass out $100 bills to everybody. He would knock on doors. He had an entourage with him. Knock on doors. This was a bad part of town. People being violated. This is a bad area. Walked right in, pimped out coat, handed out $100 bills to every single person in there. So when we talk about Chicago and where I'm from and sort of growing up with sports, that's a story that I think your listeners will enjoy.
That's awesome, man. Well, Jeff, thank you very much. Wise Take Nation, be sure to check us out. Give us a like on YouTube, Podbeans, and everywhere else you can find podcasts. So, for Jeff Mans, I'm Patio Joe, and as the man in the back says, good luck.